Welcome back, everybody, to the season of encounters. That's right. I'm your host, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, Portal Guide to the Stars. Got a little special interview coming up this weekend. Hope to be able to finally complete it. Tonight, we're off to Rapidae Parish, Louisiana. That's right. We're looking for the swamp ape. The official Bigfoot reports coming from the Cajun Bigfoot hunters themselves, right here on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, season of encounters. Hello, everybody. I'm here. You're there, and that makes all of this awesome. If you'd like a shout out on the air while I'm actually live, make sure you leave a message in the chat room so that I know who you are, so I can say hi a little bit later on. A little bit of business to discuss first. Let's see here. The Bigfoot Investigation Weekend 2017 is coming. That's right. Sierra City, California is roughly the place we're going to be. August 24th to the 27th, 2017. I had a couple of cancellations, so I figured I would advertise it again. We are getting close to the cutoff. We have quite a few groups coming this year, so the number is getting there. If you'd like to be on board, send us an RSVP email at sloungepodcast@gmail.com or contact me on Facebook at facebook.com/sloungepodcast for the fan page. Okay, so that's where we are at. Come investigate Sasquatch in the Sierra Mountains. It doesn't get any better than that. Okay, so now we're on to a little bit of the news. Yeah, the news. I really like this stuff. Can't be, unfortunately, it's gonna be. In the show for any time we talked about the disappearance and reappearance of Cansby last year. Well, unfortunately, he disappeared once again, and now his mystery has unfortunately been solved. The legendary silverback disappeared from his group in late February after showing signs of weakness. Despite massive searches by the staff, no trace of him was found. But a few days ago, on May 12th, the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund trackers spotted a partially decomposed gorilla body in the river during their daily patrols and arranged for its removal and transport over the weekend. Yesterday, the necropsy was done and performed by the gorilla doctors in conjunction with the Fossey Fund scientists and associated researchers. Due to the advanced decomposition of the body, identification was not simple, although it was clearly the size and shape of a big silverback. Luckily, a photo of Cansby's teeth taken earlier this year by gorilla doctors was available to be compared with the teeth from the carcass, and there are many signs that they are indeed Cansby's unique dentals. So, unfortunately for the world, we have lost another great, another one of our depleting cousins has gone. So, farewell, Cansby. Godspeed to you, and may your descendants rule the mountains for many a millennia longer. Speaking of our cousins in the wild, orangutans, they nurse for a record-breaking amount of time. According to the world's largest tree climbers, orangutans now have another superlative in their name. They nurse their young longer than any other primate, a new study says. Surprising new research has revealed that the colorful great apes suckle for up to 8 years, and in some cases longer. Yeah, humans did that. We'd think it was a bit creepy. Hey, what grade's your kid in? Third? Is he still breastsucking? Yeah, okay. Little is known about when the shaggy great apes wean in the wild. In part, it's because they're so challenging to study. They spend most of their time aloft and out of sight. So there you go, man. 8 years to the nipple. Hang on to it, little buddy, and it's all downhill after you let go of the boob. I promise you. All right, moving right along here to Maine mysteries. That's right, the Durham gorilla. What's going on here? According to the story here, Durham, Maine News Center. Maine is known for a wide variety of wildlife, but for a week in July of 1973, the old reverend here was like 3 months old. Residents of rural Durham reported seeing an entirely different creature. It's one that's leading cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman has researched for decades. Nowadays, they call it the Durham gorilla. The reports began when the Huntington children were riding their bikes by Jones Cemetery near the Durham-Brunswick line when they saw a creature with a monkey face running through the cemetery. The children told their mother about the encounter, and the very next day, she saw the creature in the same area on the side of the road before it dashed into the woods. She, too, described it as an ape-like creature. It was hairy. It was bent over. It ran on 4 legs sometimes, got up on 2, and seemed to run along, described Coleman. Dozens of local and state police officers and sheriff's deputies swarmed the Dunham area over the next few days as calls from frightened residents poured in. Could it be a bear? A moose? No way. There were no boots. There were no moose tracks, said Coleman. They were actually ape-like tracks with a toe out to the side. That's what makes it weird. Similar casts can be seen at the International Crypto Museum in Portland. That's right, the home of Mr. Loren Coleman himself. All right, moving downwind a little bit from that. Dinosaur mummy unveiled with skin and guts still intact. That's right. It's not merely a fossil, but an actual dinosaur itself, frozen. You can see its bones, yet scientists are hailing it as perhaps the best preserved dinosaur specimen ever unearthed. That's because 110 million years later, those bones remain covered by the creature's intact skin and armor. Indeed, the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology in Albert, Canada, recently unveiled a dinosaur so well preserved that many have taken to calling it not a fossil, but an honest-to-goodness dinosaur mummy. Of course, it is made out of rock, and it is a fossil, but nonetheless, with the creature's skin, armor, and even some of its guts intact, researchers are astounded at its nearly unprecedented level of preservation. You can check that article there out on allthatisinteresting.com. Okay, so from where your ancestors are from and go, oh, we're French. Are you French or are you more? That becomes the question. This article here tells us that there's no such thing as pure European or anybody else. When the first busloads of migrants from Syria and Iraq rolled into Germany 2 years ago, some small towns were overwhelmed. The village of some population of 102 had to take 750 asylum seekers. Wow, 7 times their own numbers. That's pretty overwhelming. Most visitors swung into action in keeping with Germany's strong blogging, but one self-described neo-Nazi on the district, I'm not going to read another friggin' word of this. Thank you, science, for getting into political crap that I want nothing to do with. Basically, the article goes on to tell you that what you think you are, you're not, and perhaps you should have your DNA run to find out what you really are before you start to hate anyone. That's basically what happens to the neo-Nazi dude who finds out that he, in fact, is the exact race that he is hating on. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Yeah, so I'll save you on that one. If you see that science article, it does get a bunch neo-Nazi-ish. Thanks, science. Okay. We got grassy beginnings for the earliest Homo, thanks to phys.org. In 2013, an ASU researcher team found the oldest known evidence of our genus Homo at Ledi Guru in the lower Awash Valley of Ethiopia. A jawbone with teeth dated back 2.8 million years ago, about 400,000 years earlier than previously known fossils of Homo. After the discovery, attention turned to reconstructing the environment of this ancient ancestor to understand why they were there and why then. But how do you recreate specific environments from millions of years ago to understand where our ancient ancestors lived? Anthropologists. Wow, that's a long friggin' word. Is that like 7 syllables? Check that out. Use animal fossils like proxy time machines to recreate what the past environments were like. So they figured out that they come from a grassy plain all the way back then too. You can check that one out. I found it was interesting. We're going to move through these last a little bit quickly because the news is really even starting to bore me tonight. All right, primates living near humans show their ingenuity. Researchers at Oxford's Brookes University have documented how and why different species of primates are changing their behaviors to survive near humans. That's right. We're not following the Star Trek directive of no interaction. The research was published in a special issue of the International Journal of Primatology in April and guest edited by Matthew McLean, Oxford Brookes University, UK. That's right. Of the 16 articles, 6 were authored by the staff of researchers from Oxford Brookes. Across the globe, humans are transforming wildlife habitats, and to survive in a fast-changing world, animals must change their behavior to adjust to the new conditions. And that's how sad our world is getting. We're pushing our cousins out of their environment still. Hey, Tasmanian tiger expedition, and they're looking for eyewitnesses. That's right. Jack Tessier, founder of the ACRO, and he's looking for Tasmanian tiger eyewitnesses in Tasmania. The expedition will be taking place in June, and they're set to leave from Melbourne to Devonport on June 3rd or 4th. If you or someone you know has a sighting, they would love to hear from you. cryptozoologist99@gmail.com, or just ask me for the article, and I will gladly pass it along to you. Okay, now finally into some Bigfoot stuff. Look at that. 13 minutes into the show, and he's just now talking about Bigfoot stuff. Yeah, that's right. Colorado hunter claims he was sexually assaulted by a Sasquatch. Oh, my God. Then it's got his name. Daryl Whitaker from Glenwood Springs in Colorado claims a Sasquatch attacked him and attempted to rape him while he was walking in the woods. The 57-year-old man was walking to his hunting cabin on Sunday to see if it had suffered any damage during the winter. All of a sudden, a large gorilla-like creature dropped from a tree in front of him, punched him in the face. Bobby, did they ever find that gorilla which punched you in the eye? No, Mama. The search continues. It was at least 8 foot tall, and it punches hurt like hell. I was knocked right out at the first blow. While Mr. Whitaker was trying to recover from the attack, the large humanoid creature began to tear his clothes while letting out some terrifying howls. When I regained consciousness, he had already torn my pants and was tearing through my underwear. I stabbed him in the shoulder with my hunting knife, and that made him run away. Mr. Whitaker immediately reported the attack to both the Glenwood Springs Police Department and the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Agency, and a joint investigation has been launched. Daryl Whitaker is convinced that the creature who attacked him was a Sasquatch, but the GSPD investigators say it's more probable that the attacker is simply a particularly large, hairy man. They're currently interrogating nearby residents to see if anyone noticed an individual corresponding to the description of the suspect. According to the victim, the attacker measured around 8 foot tall and is extremely hairy. He has brown hair, dark brown eyes, and extremely large feet. If you possess any information concerning the suspect, please contact the Glenwood Springs Police Department or the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Agency. And that, my friends, is a bogus Bigfoot track. Bum, 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 bum. Anyhow, yeah, he knocked me right out, and then he was going to butter me. Bobby, did they ever find that gorilla? I don't think so, Mama. The search still continues. Okay. The BFG, that's right, the Bigfoot Field Guide, came across my news feed once again this week, and they're doing audio drop boxes. Now, I thought this was a pretty neat idea. Put your recorder inside a waterproof container, drill a small hole in it so that the microphone can protrude through the connection port, and then hang it from a tree. The article goes on to talk about where and how and all kind of interesting things of how to make it. So you can check that out at the bigfootfieldguide.blogspot.com. Okay, folks, it's time that we're going to do some learning. So I come across this interesting video. Somebody could have sent it to me. It could have been in my feed. I'm not really sure how I found it, but Colorado Bigfoot, the Sasquatch sundial, the hut, Holy Cross. They make it look like it's humans. Now, you go through this 4-minute video, and this Colorado Bigfoot person goes on to tell you how no human could do this. No human would do this. There's never been a fire there. And he is 150% correct. So, as I said, let's get to a little bit of learning. Okay. So, that's not the learning I want to do. I got to bring up one more piece of evidence, and then we can gladly talk about this. Okay, so I come across the video. The 4-minute video goes on to show the medicine, or goes, I just ruined it. It goes on to show you the sundial. It goes on to show you some kind of a sleeping structure and some kind of a blind. Here, I've got the screen share. I can share with you guys a few pictures that would be fair use, I'd say. Here's a picture of the wiki. This is somebody's lean-to, sleeping structure, whatever you want to call it. Definitely some type of a primal structure. And let's see here. There's that sundial again. The Bigfoot sundial. No human. Why would a human do this? Humans would never do any of this. There's the wind blind that's literally just down to the left of the sleeping quarters. So the sleeping quarters is here, and the wind blind is directly down from it. But no human would do that. No, that would just be silly. And my point to all this is the learning we're doing is the fact that this guy come across something really cool. He's on a high ridge overlooking the meadows on a flat spot that's not going to get flooded out. And it's most likely an ancient Native American site. Now, for you, those of you who don't recognize what this sundial, this Sasquatch sundial is, it's actually a medicine wheel. And if you don't believe me, let's do a little bit of learning here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, gee, let's go back here and look. That's exactly in the same layout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's a medicine wheel. This is a Native American location. And just like every other crazy white guy out there, they forget the fact that for tens of thousands of years, places like this were sacred to Native Americans. And here this guy is, one, attributing it to an animal who probably would never want to do this in its entire existence because it's a total waste of energy for them. 2, never sees past his own ideas that this could have been a Native American site. And that's kind of sad. So we're pretty sure that we can agree that this is a medicine wheel circle, not a fire ring. He's absolutely right. There was never a fire ring there. But then we go on to do a little bit more learning that it very well could be an addiction alchemy medicine wheel. The way the size and the way the stones are laid out, it very well could have been a modern Native American person there fighting some type of an addiction, and that's his medicine wheel to the spirits to try and get that monkey off of his back. So if we go back to the original picture and look at it once again, as we can see, the bigger rocks are in the same positions as it would be for an addiction wheel. So lesson be learned here. If you're an investigator and you're out in these types of really off-the-grid locations looking for Sasquatch, you will more than likely also run across Native American sites. And just be a little tiny bit more respectful than this fellow was, because I was really a little disturbed by some of the things that he did. And by the way that he acted, and like I said, to attribute this to an animal is just kind of an ignorant thing to do because he's just uninformed. So Colorado Bigfoot, I'm glad that you're out there and you're doing those, you're trying to do things, but let's step it down a little bit because it took me about 4 minutes to identify it and 5 minutes to find the answer on the internet. So there we have it, folks. There's either a shaman's wiki or a Native American guy fighting addiction, out away from everybody. And most likely that's his medicine wheel. So that's the truth behind the Sasquatch sundial. We done did some learning today, folks. There we go. So the old Reverend here does know a thing or two about the woods. Imagine that. And with that, everybody, I believe it's time that we talk to old Dean Cooper here about his quasi theory of the week. And if you give me just a moment here, I will share that picture so you ain't got to stare at my lovely face while that whole thing's going on. Let's get some learning done from our favorite quasi theorist, Mr. Dean Cooper. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Kepler and beach ball. Some of you may recall that about a year ago, I did a quasi theory on beach balls. The gist of it was that if you take 13 of them, put one in the middle, surround it with the other 12 making a sphere around it, squish them all together a bit, then the one in the middle would mush into a dodecahedron, the fifth of the 5 Platonic solids. It's the one with 12 pentagons for its sides. Kepler, in his book Mysterium Cosmographicum, The Secret of the Universe, argued that you could use the Platonic solids to get a first mathematical approximation of the size of the orbits of the planets. He proposed that the cosmos, which was the name Pythagoras gave to the universe, was organized by geometrical mathematics. Cosmos, in ancient Greek, meant the beautifully, harmoniously ordered universe. You've probably seen a drawing of the model he made. He took the solids in this order: octahedron, icosahedron, dodecahedron, tetrahedron, and cube. There were only 5 known planets back then: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And the order he put the solids in corresponded to the order of the planets. He then stuck the solids one inside the other, an octahedron inside an icosahedron, inside a dodecahedron, inside a tetrahedron, with a cube on the outside. The vertices of each touched the sides of the one it was stuck in. He then put a sphere around each solid, such that the points of each solid touched the sphere where each point touched the sides of the solid it was in. Got that pictured in your head? Now, draw a line from the center of the inner sphere, the center of which would correspond to the sun, to the outermost one. Where the line passes through the circumference of each succeeding sphere is where the corresponding planet orbits, or pretty close to it. The way the line is divided by the spheres is also very close to how you would divide a string on a guitar up with finger pressure to play your do, re, mi's on a single string. It gets even better. Kepler assumed that the universe had a favorite frequency as its note to tune things to. And that was where the middle C is at 256 cycles per second. Why he liked C at 256 is a whole nother but closer related ballgame. He assigned the note C to the Sun, D, Mercury, and so forth. Kepler noticed that when going from Mars' orbit to Jupiter's, there was a bigger gap than he expected. He said there ought to be a planet there because there's room for one. But since all the other planets all had orbits that represented notes that were in harmony with each other, the planet would probably have fallen apart. Why? Because since Mars' orbit corresponded to the note F and Jupiter was G, the spot in between was an iffy note, a point of harmonic instability. That's where the asteroid belt is, an unformed planet. And I can hear some of you giggling about Jupiter having a G-spot. Grow up. Kepler had to modify this theory as more accurate data on the movements of the planets became available, especially from Tycho Brahe. It became obvious that the orbits were slightly elliptical and not completely circular, but he still used the same basic method and did not change his assumption that the universe is musical in its very nature. If any of you out there are big fans of Newton, please note that Kepler had no theory of gravity. He didn't need one. Newton's gravity-based orbital mechanics couldn't predict the interaction of more than 2 bodies, let alone a whole solar system. What do you expect from a guy whose biggest science hit came from being whacked on the head by an apple? You may read the text of this on my blog at bhaidin.com, BHAIDIN.com.
Well, there you have it. Got knocked on the noggin with an apple. That guy's a jackass. Thanks a lot, Dean, our quasi theorist. All right, well, this is the part in the show where we say hi to you people out there watching live, and I go out here to the chat room and see who's there. I see that Gary and Whitney there hanging out there tonight. Hi, guys. Starshine, she's checked in for the evening. How you doing there, girl? Mr. Dalrymple, I'm with Dalrymple and Coke. James Dalrymple is back to see us once again. Glad you're with us, sir. Mr. Collier Wilmus, that's right. Come see us on Monday nights with What You're Watching. Let's see here. Who else? Mr. Rod Dupree. He's always in the place to be. The California Pickin'. Hey, Drew. Glad you could join us tonight. The quasi-theorist, Mr. Cooper. That's right. He's hanging out there chatting with you people. Then there's Candy Apple. I think that's the first time I've seen that one in the chat room. I'm glad you're here to love the show. Oreo Cream Rocks. That's right. Got my hat, bitches. That's right. You got to know you're loved by your fans when they make you an awesome, and I mean awesome hat in the color that you asked for. It just stinks like goat milk soap. I got to fix that. But hey, it's perfect. Thank you so much. We need nothing. That one comes from Oreo Cream Rocks. That's right. The Reverend is for sale, people. I'll hawk your crap for samples. Let's see here who else is hanging out there in the chat room tonight. I know there's more people. And now, batting third, playing center field, Mr. Kurt Harris. There's Squatchbox. Hey, Miss Cassie, and of course, Christopher. He's hanging out there tonight. How you doing there, boy? Let's see. I know there's more people than this. Mr. Dave Stump. He's back in the house tonight. Glad you're with us, Dave. I'm always glad you're here. Let's see. There's a majestic Bigfoot. Yeah, Whitaker, dude, he is a sicko. Getting butt bumped by Biggie in the woods. You know, there's a famous DNA researcher who claimed something very similar. Let's see here. Who else is out there? Sam Squanch Rivera's in the house. Glad you're joining us tonight there, sir. We're getting down to the bottom. If you haven't said hi, I don't know you're here, and that's going to be a problem. So I'm an effing problem. Look at that. They showed up. Glad you could be here with us as well. And I think that's probably going to be the last of the ones that I didn't know. Lance Windsor, see, snuck it in on me. Glad you're there, buddy. And that is how we do that. Tonight on the Season of Encounters, that's right, I said we were going to go to Louisiana. We're going to Cajun country. That's right. And it's going to be crazy, y'all. Here, let me bring the map up for you because I know I have it. I just don't know where it went. We may have to bring that back up, but that's okay. That only takes a moment. There it is. What's it called? I'm so sorry. I can never pronounce this. I'm gonna torture this, y'all. So just be prepared. We are going to Rapides Parish in Louisiana. Now I know I said we was going to Cajun country, which is usually Lafayette, but unfortunately Lafayette ain't got no Bigfoot encounters that I can come from my source. So if you have a source of Bigfoot encounters from Lafayette County, I'll be glad to do them. But tonight we're going to move on up to Rapides County, because Rapides Parish, Louisiana, because that apparently actually has some. So with that, let's take us a little peek at the actual place we're talking about, because it showing up looks matchy. The swamps of Florida carry the Sasquatch. Why wouldn't the swamps of Louisiana do the same thing? Now, I did check into gator hunting in both of these locations, and they are open. So, I mean, if there's water, there's alligators in the South. That's really how it goes. So all these little creek lines and all these other waterways are still hunting. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Sam Squanches aren't living directly within amongst all those swamp areas as well. But let's find out right here on the Season of Encounters. See here, the late 1970s, near the Indian Creek camping area, near the town of Woodworth, about 15 minutes south of Alexandria. Let's see here. We used to go camping a lot during the summer months to various camping areas. This time we went to an area just outside of Indian Creek, known to us as Little Indian Creek. I had been asleep when I was awakened by the sounds of the raccoons in the garbage cans, as they often did. Being a kid, it was fun as well as fascinating to watch them play, so I decided to stay up and watch them while everyone else was sleeping. I don't know how long I watched, but I noticed they kept looking towards the woods. The woods were separated from our camp by a narrow 4 to 5 foot across, but deep stream, 5 to 6 foot deep, when all of a sudden I heard a loud splash, the sound like wading, and he's getting chills from writing this. And at this point is when he noticed that the raccoons were gone. I crouched down, barely looking over the window's edge so as to not see what was coming across the creek see me watching. As it rose out of the creek, it let out a very deep growl and made some grunting sounds as it climbed the embankment. And as it did this, I heard another splash as another entered the water. I watched as the first creature climbed out of the creek and into sight. Kept two lanterns on during the night for security reasons, and as I saw this creature go through our things that were left out, I began to cry from fear. In front of me was a creature that was at least 7 feet tall and very big. It was covered in hair. I watched it as the second came out of the creek, making almost the same growl and grunting sounds as the first one had done. I laid back down, not wanting to see them look my way and come to where I was. I lay there motionless for what seemed like forever till I heard them leave the same way they had come. As they did, the raccoons returned shortly thereafter, but sleep came hours later. Wow. Yeah, little kid, he was like 8 years old, looking out the window, watching the sand squanches go through their stuff. That's creepy. Little coon asses. All right, let's see here. Next one up here is also from the late 70s near the town of Pineville in Essler, near the Essler Field Road. They had just had a house built on Essler Field by a set of woods, and at the time, it wasn't too populated. Well, one night, my father and mother and a friend come over on a Friday night and played cards. Their daughter was with my sister's friends, so they were all outside at night, playing around on our father's car hood, which was parked on the side of the driveway next to the woods. Well, I got down from the car and went off to the side of the woods and was walking around a street light that we had put up near the end of the driveway and off on the side of the woods, when I felt something standing in front of me. It was very hairy or furry, so I lifted my head all the way up to look it straight in the eyes of a Bigfoot. Its eyes were very dark and were very pupil big. Its face had a grayish color to it. It was almost like a gorilla face, but wasn't dark, but grayish. It had more upright forehead than face. The face itself wasn't all covered in hair. All it did was look back down at me. No expression on its face at all, like it was just curious. Well, of course, I ran out of the side of the woods and towards my house, leaving my sister and her friend behind. I told my parents what I seen. I could finally calm down, but they thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But after a few minutes, my sister and her friend ran in and slammed the door and said they heard someone walking in the woods. Nothing else was said, and I think everyone else forgot, but I never could or did. It didn't seem to be a monster, but it seemed to be a creature with a soul and feelings and wasn't out to harm me. Well, I don't know, you can make all those determinations from it because it didn't crush your skull when it saw you, but jeez, I'd pee myself, like right down my leg, man. There'd be a puddle right there. It would like, give me one of them looks because I peed myself probably, but those are just the things that happen. Let's see here. The next one up was 1980 fall October, near National Forest. I hope I said that right. Probably not. Nearest town is Tioga on Highway 71. Late one night, I was around 11 or 12 years old. I was awakened by something at the window of my bedroom. As I woke up and looked around my room, the light from the street light in the backyard cast a shadow on my window. The shadow filled the entire 8-foot window, and was the shadow of something walking by. The outline looked like a big person with its head leaning forward and messy hair at the time. I thought, who is this in my yard? As we had 6 acres of woods that backed up to our roughly swamp, and flagon was nearby. So I got up and went to the back door and stepped out to see who was out there. What I saw was something big and black that stepped over the 4.5-foot chain link fence and walked into the woods. I don't know what I was looking at, but we lived rurally, and our house set about an acre off of the road. Being it the late 70s, the area was not developed, so I could not imagine it being a person. When I told my dad about it, he told me it was nothing and not to worry about it. So for years, it put it out of my mind. To this day, I'm not sure what I saw. All I know is it filled up the 8-foot window and stepped over a 4.5-foot chain link fence. In my mind today, that's got to be pretty big to do that. Another one of those creepy in the house types of things, but when you're living in and amongst the swamps, those types of things kind of happen. Oh, Bigfoot comes to my backyard. People go, yeah, really? Yeah, boy, if you live next to a state forest or protected lands, he very well could be. Here's in the early 1980s, summertime, June. That's right, right again, close to Pineville near Highway 107. Give me a moment while I wet my whistle. This was in the early 80s, late spring or early summer. I was still in high school, graduated in 83. Myself and two brothers and my best friend and his two brothers were in the field with our dogs goofing off on top of a hill overlooking some swamp bottom. We had been talking about and wondering why the cattle that stayed in this field never went to a certain part of the field, the area we were looking at. We jokingly called this the Devil's Corner because of this. On this particular day, the cattle had wandered into this area and were grazing. After about 10 to 15 minutes of us sitting on top of the hill talking about this, we noticed that a few of the cattle looked very anxious and were looking towards the fence row that bordered the swamp area. We all started getting excited as the cows were scared of something, when all of a sudden the herd startled and began running up the hill out of that corner and out of the bottom. Since we were in their path, we moved and watched them run back to the ward to the south end of the field. Being curious, we gathered up some weapons, logs, sticks, and rocks, and decided to go see what was out there. Not expecting to see anything, we crossed the bottom and started towards the fence row. We noticed that it was extremely quiet in that corner of the field. We began to look around when we noticed some reddish hairs stuck to the barbs on the fence. Then thought, hey, there are no reddish colored cows, so why is this hair color and something moving in the backwoods? Very thick and dense and lots of thorns where the hair was at. Well, at this time, I noticed that a pine tree roughly 5 inches in diameter had been twisted and knocked over at about 8 to 10 feet up. We hadn't had any storms recently and no other trees were damaged. We decided we should leave. As we started to leave, the younger boys threw their stuff down and began running at me, but me and my friend didn't. And then I had the feeling that we were being watched. I asked my friend if he felt it as well, and he said, yeah. I turned towards the fence to see a face about 7 feet up in a standing next to a broken tree. I asked my friend if he saw it, and he said, uh-huh. We stared at it for about 2 minutes before we finally turned and ran away. What I saw was two eyes, a gray-white colored, with redness hair. Oh, God, this guy can't write. The top of the head was hidden by the brush. The bridge of the nose was very apparent. Straight, long, and narrow to the rest was hidden from view. After that, we never said anything about it again. About a month later, my friend decided he was going to go back in there and look around with his dog, the same dog that was with us the first time, that acted very afraid. Apparently, I'm not going to be able to read you the rest of this story because it's gotten to the point that it's incomprehensible. But I think we get the idea. In the swamp bottom, there was a Bigfoot where the cows don't go. Now, you guys know me. I've got a cousin that's got a horse farm that basically has visitors that come through it every twice a year, and none of the cows or the horses will go down in there when them visitors are in town. So I very much understand this type of situation, but I can't read nonsense. I'm sorry, folks. But there's still a couple of more stories left, so don't worry, we'll be all right. 1985 summer, July 1st. Again, Pineville, Highway 116. You people should be putting X's in the maps on these things because you could probably set up all your nighttime investigations around the stories I'm reading. Anyhow, I believe that throughout the course of my life, I'm 27 now, I've encountered this Bigfoot twice, possibly 3 times in 3 different states. My second encounter was when I also lived in Pineville, Louisiana, in a log cabin on the Donahue Ferry Road, to be exact. It was 1985, watching the TV show of Halley's Comet. It was around 11 o'clock, and it was past my bedtime in the evening. There was almost no moon as I stood out on the backyard looking up at the sky to see the comet. The house had a large yard bordered by a pine forest on two sides. As I looked up in the sky, I was startled to death by an extremely loud scream that came from the very edge of the forest about 100 feet away. I immediately started running back up a small hill towards my house when the high-pitched scream blasted my eardrums again. The whole time I was running towards the house, now 75 feet away, I kept my eyes focused on the origination of the sound coming from the forest edge. While I was running, I slipped and lost my balance a little as a result of not watching where I was going. When I did this, I seemed to startle what could now see is a very large, upright creature standing in the shadows. No time. I just didn't see it because it hadn't moved until I slipped. Its head came to the bottom of the branches in the trees that it was standing next to. I ran inside and told my father, who dismissed it as a screech owl from the comfort of his old lazy boy. Honestly, don't know how he didn't hear the scream. The next day I went out to the tree and with some scrap wood, climbed it and sat in the branch that was closest to the head. And I remember sitting there with my legs dangling, thinking that it was too high for me to jump just straight down. Wow. So there you have it. Big old Sam Squanch standing in the middle of standing there at the edge of the tree line, watching things, watching you. You ain't even know he was there because he didn't move. And the old Reverend talks about hiding in plain sight. You never even know a Sasquatch was there if he didn't move because your eyes are never going to track him. It's one of the problems that our human eyeballs have. That's why cameras work a little bit better. All right, finishing up here with the official Bigfoot stories from Rapides County, Louisiana. Year 2000, in the year 2000. That's right, August, summertime, Pineville, Highway 28. That's right. Let's see here. The sighting one occurred on Tuesday, August 22nd. A logger has 2 encounters over a 3-day period. Sorry, let's get that out of the way. Earl Weinstein is the logger's name. Sighting 1 occurred on Tuesday, August 22nd, 2000, around 1 o'clock. Mr. Whitstein stated that he was operating his cutter, which resembles a skidder, and the only difference, basically, one has a huge shear-type cutters and the other has a holder. Whitstein was approaching some fallen trees when he saw what appeared at the time to be the rear end of a horse. Thinking that it was a nearby residence horse, he rattled the cutters in an attempt to scare it away. But as he rattled the cutters, the object turned and stood up. It was at this time that he realized that he was not looking at a horse, but a large bipedal creature. He noticed that it was covered from head to toe in thick, long, jet black hair. The hair around the face was also long, and he couldn't make out any facial features. The creature turned and began to head for a nearby logging road and ran parallel to Flagon Creek. Whitstein then began to follow in the cutter, and as he got nearer to the creature, it turned and jumped into the creek, the bayou, and began to swim to the other side. Whitstein stated that it looked like it couldn't swim very well as it kept bobbing up and down, trying to keep its head out of the water, but would occasionally go underwater. After reaching the other side, the creature stopped and looked back, then fled into the adjoining woods. Whitstein called his boss, who thought he was joking, and brushed it off. Encounter number 2 occurred on Thursday, August 24th in 2000, around 7:30 in the morning. While surveying a property line with another logger, as they walked the line, they came upon the creature again alongside a drying bayou, a boggy bayou, of course. They came within 8 feet, measured during the investigation, of the creature as it stood looking at them from beside a large bush. He yelled out to it, "Hey, what are you doing?" The creature then fled north away from Whitstein and the other logger. Whitstein then called his boss and the property owner. The landowner notified Wildlife and Fisheries, the Rapides Parish Sheriff's Office, along with the local paper and TV stations. The paper had the owner contact the BFRO. There you have it, folks. Those are the official Bigfoot encounters from Rapidae Parish, Louisiana. Okay, so with all that being said, that's going to bring us right up almost to the end of this edition. Look at here, 8:49 minutes into it already, and it's going to be one of those nights. We're going to end it all up with a Cajun Bigfoot campfire story. Absolutely, we are going to. Don't forget, speaking of Bigfoot campfire stories, that a brand new Volume 3, Issue 1 is out. Bigfoot Escapes from the Carnival Freak Show. You won't want to miss this. Probably one of the best Bigfoot campfire shows I've ever put out, and there's more coming every Sunday. So with that, everybody, I want to thank you for being here and watching the show with me. Everybody be here live Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific. Check us out on Facebook.com/SLounge Podcast. Click the subscribe button. Click the little bell for reminders. Follow us on Twitter. Find us on the Facebooky thing. And may the Squatch most definitely be with you. What the hell is that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. Welcome to another installment of Bigfoot Campfire Stories. This story comes to us from deep south when a Cajun alligator hunter came across the scene he couldn't explain away. Well, let's hear his story. Well, Chili and I run an alligator catching business in the swamps of the bayou, and each year we get our share of weird stuff. But this particular year, things were out of sorts in one particular pond we bait. For 2 weeks running now, we get the boat to the lake to go check out our hanging baits, only to find the poles ripped down and the chicken bait ripped off the hook. Now, we hang these baits in shallow water so the gators will rise up and eat them. But 12 lines and each one had the bait taken 2 weeks in a row. So Chili and I decided to camp it out and see just what was eating on our baits. So Chili beached the boat on the edge of the line where we could see our lines in the water. And we set up a tarp and made a small fire, cooked up some of the crawfish we just caught. Well, after a few slugs from the old jug, I decided it was time to sack out. So I cozy up to the fire and fell asleep. Well, a few hours later, Chili startled me awake by shaking me and telling me someone was splashing around our lines and taking bait off of the hooks. Now, we don't take too kind of poachers around here, these parts, so I grabbed up the gator gun and Chili grabbed the spotlight. We took off to catch him. And the closer we got to the lines, we got down low so we could see where he was going next. The guy was dressed all in black from head to toe, but you could hear him moving in the water, not too far from Chili. So he lit up the spotlight and caught him right in the middle of yanking off the next bait. But wait a second now. That wasn't no man dressed in black. That was a skunk ape. Had to be over 6 feet tall. What we thought was black clothes was the hair it was covered in. Well, Chili lit up the face and it froze in place. And I let loose that 22 mag I was carrying. And that thing took off running through the water the other way. Well, Chili followed it with the spotlight, and I continued to shoot at it until it was way out of sight. We decided that daylight was going to take a look around, so we went back to our camp, sat by the fire. Throughout the night, we could hear that skunk ape out in the trees making an awful noise. Wooing, woo, woo! We thought maybe it was wounded, so we agreed to look around the next morning. Well, finally, the sun had come up, and we started to look around. Well, we had shot at the beast, but didn't find any blood or hair laying around. Chili had grabbed the backup pistol out of the boat, and we followed the scuff marks where the creature had run into the woods. Chili tracked him back to a bush across from our camp where it sat and watched us in the night, and the tracks led off. No blood or hair or anything. We figured we had missed it, and the noisy night was just its attempt to get us to leave. So that old skunk ape could have that lake. We went ahead and took down all of our bait lines and drove back to the ramp and pulled out of the lake for good. We told a bunch of people the story, but they all say it was just someone messing with us. But I know what the hell it was we saw. Well, these hardened swamp donkeys sure do know their Cajun critters. In the woods, it was definitely a skunky